and welcome to the weekly podcast. I'm your host, Gurtej Atwal. I have my co host, Abdul Wahid, a very respectable member of our city, with me today. And in today's podcast, we have an accomplished policymaker who motivates everyone around her. So we thank and welcome City of Irvine's Mayor Farha Khan. We will
Thank you.
learn from her experience and lifelong learnings in policymaking. So now I'll request for her to please share about her personal and policymaking journey with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And it's so exciting to get to know both of you and all the accomplishments that you're doing in your city. For me, I never thought about going into politics. It kind of happened naturally. My background is in regulatory affairs. I was a regulatory affairs manager for a biotech company. I'm originally from the Bay Area. And when we moved to Southern California, it was in the beginning, very beginnings of the recession, and a lot of the companies out here had hiring freezes. So I got more involved, in my husband's business, got more involved on the nonprofit side, and ended up being hired as the executive director of a local nonprofit. Ran that for a while, and during that time, really got to know about the communities in our area and all the struggles that they had and all the issues that they were facing, and found myself showing up at city council meetings during public comments and speaking up on behalf of the community and asking those leaders to do what's right, and finding out time after time that they weren't. And so, I was working on a campaign, on someone else's campaign in 2014, and just, felt like this urge that there was a voice that was missing. And so when I brought up the fact that maybe I would be interested in running, I can't tell you how disappointing it was to hear things like, Irvine is not ready for so much diversity, or that someone with a name like mine is unelectable. And of course, for me, challenge is always one of those things I take head on. So when I heard that, it was like, okay, we've got to do something here, because, if I'm hearing these things now, imagine in 5, 10, 20 years, what our next generation is going to be hearing. So we needed to, for me, it was very personal. And so I ran for the first time in 2016. I didn't win my campaign for city council. I actually lost, but I came in fourth out of 11 candidates. So a lot of people started asking, like, who is this person? Where did she come from? How did she get so many votes? And then the second time I ran in 2018, I actually got the highest vote out of 12 candidates for city council. And then, of course, 2 years later, it was a 4-year seat, so I was not planning on doing anything. But 2 years later, I found myself in a position when we were talking about social justice issues in our city. We had a mayor that just didn't get it. With the start of the pandemic and everything else, we have UC Irvine here in our city, and she was telling students that were having a hard time paying their rent to go find a job at Amazon. And when people were speaking up about social injustice, she was telling them to go find another city to live in. And that was just unacceptable. That didn't settle right with me. And so I started asking around if anyone was going to run against this person who was an incumbent for off and on from mayor to city council, 26-year incumbent. And no one wanted to run against her. So I was in a safe seat. I said, you know what, let's give it a shot. And lo and behold, not only did we beat her, but we beat her by 13,000 votes.
Wow.
And so I basically, for my election, I was the highest vote getter in the history of Irvine, and at the same time becoming the first woman of color, first Asian woman to be elected mayor. So exciting time, but it came from a place where there was a lot of neglect for our community.
Wow, that's a good journey, and I really appreciate what you told us. And it's always a good thing when lose once, you learn what you have done, and then you go from there. And it was a great achievement that you did, And knowing Irvine is a big city, it's a coming up city. It has got a lot of potential from the days that I knew about it. So you've done a great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Farhad. So, from the city's perspective, as you mentioned, that there were lots of things that kind of encouraged you to run into or come into this political arena. So, what kinds of issues prominently you faced, and what kinds of issues nowadays you are seeing? What is your focus? Where you want to take the city forward?
I think one of the most important issues for me was making sure that we were handling the pandemic correctly, and not only that, but planning for economic recovery. I mean, if you've got to plan for the economic recovery
Mhm.
long before the pandemic ends, so you do it right. And at the same time, our city it's almost 300,000 in population. It's a growing city, but yet we weren't making ourselves known. We weren't branding our city, and so that was also very important for me to do. And I'll have to tell you, we throughout Orange County, our city has had the lowest COVID cases. We had the lowest deaths, and at the same time, we worked hard. One of the first things I did as mayor was commit to creating two subcommittees, and they were one was the COVID-19 task force, and the second was business reopening task force, which really brought together all our healthcare, local healthcare experts, and at the same time for the business, brought our business community together. And so in conjunction, we made sure that while the county was a little slow in getting us the resources we needed, we worked through different venues and avenues, making sure that we brought in the vaccines as soon as possible, especially first to our most vulnerable seniors, and then of course to the rest of the community. We're the only city in Orange County that not only had its own testing site, but also had its own vaccine site as well. And it was a drive-through format. We did it ourselves, didn't wait on the county. And so these are the type of things you get to do when you're really forward thinking and making sure that you're serving the community. So it's been really exciting. And right now, I'm working a lot with our business reopening task force, making sure that we're safeguarding our current businesses and opening those doors, especially to those startups and tech companies that are looking for a home in our city.
So far, all those policies and stuff that you have got away, I'm going to divert you a little bit away from that. And this is for the younger generation that they are watching, they want to listen from you. So at what age you will get into helping the public?
Wow, at what age?
Uh,
Very young, I think, because I remember when we were very, very young, my mom used to make my sisters and I, take things to the masjid, right? So if it was Ramadan, she would cut up the fruit or make some rice, and we would have to go and deliver it. So it was always the service part was always something that we grew up with. Service continued with me in high school, continued with me in college, and even after my shift from corporate to nonprofit, service became a very important part of the work that I did. So I say, for me, I am doing the same with my two boys, making sure that they're out there serving. And it's something that I think everyone should have in their life. You got to give back.
Yeah, and that's good to know because helping community at the young age. Now, this is how I got into this whole system. Being in the, at a very young age, I was pushed into doing things, and then we got into it, and then
Yeah.
it's a natural flow when you grow up. So I think this is a good advice to a younger generation. Whatever your parents tell you, go and do help in the public. Go in there. Don't be ashamed, right? And that's what we're
Exactly.
looking into. So, and the other question: growing up in a Muslim family, right, like you and me. Did it ever come to your mind that there will be forces that can derail your thought? If so, how did you overcome that?
Wow, that's an important question. I think for me, it's always been like my life is very faith-based, right? So
Mhm.
for me, my connection with God is very important to me. And I think for me, it's always making sure that what I'm doing is on the right path. So even if it's speaking up on social justice issues, whether it's making sure that people have their rights, all of that comes from that faith base, knowing that there is a higher power that's looking down on me. So that's always been very important to me that, I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing this to make sure that, my path forward is one that I can be proud of.
Right, and responsibility as a leader becomes a big thing when you are coming from the faith-based environment because you are not responsible for your own group, you're responsible for a lot of people and they all depend on you. So that's a great idea because now as the young generations coming up, leadership is very important, but then how you basically become a leader and do the justice for everybody. At that point, you basically help everybody out, no matter who they are.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
in politics, that's one of the hardest things is how do you bring your faith values into politics? And the best thing is to always have that clear conscience of knowing exactly who you're serving.
Yes, great. Gurdesh, any more questions you have?
Yeah, so perhaps while when you decided to go into the policy making arena, there may be many hurdles. So some of the hurdles that maybe come to your mind pretty often, and how you tackle those challenges.
I think, the first time that I ran in 2016, it was an eye opener because I didn't come from a political background. And so for me, understanding that even people from within my party saw me as an other, right? So I was not their candidate. I was different. And the fact that, like I shared, that they thought that, even with the name like mine, that I was unelectable. And so always proving them wrong, always jumping through hurdles. There's a saying that they say in politics is, women will jump through twice as many hurdles to get to a political position than men. I say that women of color, right,
Yep.
will jump through maybe 4 times as many hurdles as, a man will. And so for us, it's totally different. We have to do a lot more to prove ourselves, even though we're well qualified. So for me, it's always been the end goal. What is the end goal that I'm trying to achieve? And it's not getting that seat. That's never been the end goal. The end goal is, how am I going to be a better leader to serve the public? If I can do something better, then the public will see that in me. And that's exactly what happens.
Great. And those are great thoughts of any leadership, basically. Now, when you start building up on your leadership qualities, it's them, not you. You are just a person who's going to do things, and then you are not basically telling them to do it. You are leading them to do it, basically. And that's how
Exactly.
it is. Right? So now, moving on to the next part. Good, if you have any question, I'm going to go into the next question that I
Yeah, no,
have.
please,
Yeah, so
Abdul.
I'm going to move you away from your religious and your faith-based kind of environment to more of a technology side of it,
Oh, I
because
love
I'm a
it.
technologist. And now, as a mayor during this pandemic, how has broadband penetration impacted on your vision of Irvine?
Broadband?
Yeah, broadband.
Broadband is so important. I can't tell you, even before the pandemic, I know we had basically a monopoly when it came to internet services in our city. And during this pandemic, when everyone was home, everyone was using their computers, we felt it. Everyone felt it. That there wasn't enough. The service was not of the quality that we were expecting it to be. And so for me, we started having these conversations on broadband. Like, what kind of conduits do we have in our city? How many of those conduits do we as a city own, and how many are owned by private entities? And how much is it going to cost us to expand that conduit? And so right now, that's the stage that we're in. And now with the state providing additional funding for broadband, I think that's something that's really going to help us get to the next level in getting to broadband throughout our city.
Great. That's something that a lot of cities should look into right now. Broadband is one of the things that technology innovates a lot of ideas. And if you start putting in the services and infrastructure in place, there'll be innovations coming in because people can work from home, they can innovate, and there are great minds at home that don't have the ability to go out and do things. I've built quite a lot of broadband across the world. In fact, smart cities around the world, and smart cities is the direction to go. And I'm glad that you are looking in that direction. And there are a lot of things that is available that you can utilize to make quality of life better for the city of Irvine. So the other question I have, do you see smart technologies play an important role in providing the quality of life for the citizens of Irvine City?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's when we're looking at cities that are advancing, if you're not a smart city and if you're not making plans to head towards a smart city, then you're going to lose out so much because technology is moving so fast. And if we're not able to be on top of it, we become one of those sleepy towns. And no one wants to be that, right? Everyone wants
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
be ahead when it comes to technology. So smart cities and there's a lot that I'm learning right now. And it's something that you just don't know about, but then I'm always open to learn more because right now just little tweaks, like our lighting poles. How are
Yeah.
we handling them? Because they can be more than just lights. They can be transponders. They can be a microphone, not a microphone, but are they speakers? In a
Yeah.
case of an emergency, so letting people in that area know that there's an emergency or what they need to do. There's just so many opportunities when it comes to smart cities, and I'm ready to delve into them and see what we can do here.
Right. And I think that's the direction a lot of cities should look into right now. Smart cities, building your infrastructure, that's the foundation of it. Once you have done that, technologies can overlay on top of that. There's no
Yeah.
end to it. And I think you are doing a great job on that.
No,
Thank you
thank
for that
you.
answer.
Yeah, no, as you mentioned that, yeah, so job opportunities, they will come with this fiber optics, with the broadband. If you have more broadband, companies will invest and they'll come to these bigger cities. So the other aspect is education. So how is education you are seeing in the city of Irvine? As you mentioned earlier, that earlier the previous mayor, they were not that much focused to give the opportunities or listen to the problems of the students, because those are the assets. If the students are there, good education system is there, then only they will stay in those cities, work in those companies. Otherwise they will move to some other cities, to other universities. There's very rare chance they will come back to the city where they grew up. So how you kind of try to retain the workforce or the students that graduate from your universities, so that they stay and add value to the city where they grew up?
So one of the things that we're focusing on is as businesses are expanding and businesses are making Irvine their headquarters, we want to have that open dialogue on where are they hiring from, right? So we've got a great university here, and are they providing those opportunities locally? Because it doesn't work if businesses come in and they start bringing people from outside, and then our local workforce is not even tapped into. So of course people are start to move out, and then they start to leave your city. But one of the most committed people are those that grew up in a city and want to stay there. And so our job is to make sure that those opportunities are open to not only our students that are graduating from our universities, but also our local workforce that's looking for work. Not only that, but when you have people that live and work in the same city, you're going to reduce traffic right then and there, because you're not going to have that overflow of commuter traffic coming into your city every day. So there's a lot of benefits of making sure that we have a strong local workforce that is able to get hired locally as well.
Right. And the
Right.
other thing is they can add value more to the city because they grew up there, they know the ground level issues, and they will be more inclined to add value to their own city. So,
Absolutely.
like so like all the cities around Irvine, that is very well established technologically as well as population wise. So lots of cities, they are growing. Like in Central Valley cities, they are at a juncture where going to the next level. It developed city, it has its own issues. So how do you see, so what kinds of issues or what kind of advice you have for the younger cities that are growing, so that they can kind of tailor around or mitigate those concerns?
Absolutely. Irvine is one of the most master planned cities.
Mhm.
And we have to thank all those that came before us for coming up with the concept of a master plan. And for younger cities, I always say, you got to make sure that you're doing things right in the beginning, because it's harder to come back and fix.
Yes.
Once things are already set into place, whether it's your infrastructure or anything else, it becomes very difficult to fix it later. So take your time and really get educated on what the best policies are, what the best structures are, what the best infrastructure is, and make sure you're bringing that into your city. Because if you start off on a strong foothold, it's going to benefit your city for years to come.
Right.
Definitely, yeah. So, no, the other thing that I want to talk to you on this one is like, this pandemic has created a lot of problems for a lot of people. In fact, the cities are struggling, the funds are not coming in. How is the hospitality industry, coping up, and what are you doing for the hospitality industry?
The hospitality industry, especially in our region, was hit really hard.
Yes.
We rely a lot on tournaments and conferences. And so what happened was when we knew that we were in a more stable position when it came to the pandemic, I actually met with our all of our hotels in the city, with the Irvine Chamber, and we did we did outreach to the governor. I wrote letters. I know they did. We made sure we were telling the governor these are the plans we have in place. This is how we're going to make sure that anyone coming into these hotels are protected and safe from the pandemic. And these are the investments that these hotels have made. And we were slowly starting to see new guidelines come through, opening up for small meetings and for small conferences. And now we're in the yellow tier, and I'm so excited. I'm actually going to be at the Irvine Chamber event at one of our hotels here on Monday night, because now we're actually able to do some programming there. So, it's all about partnership, building those partnerships and speaking up when you need to, like making sure you understand what is safe, and when it's safe to do so, then speak out. Our state representatives need to hear from us. They need to hear what's happening at the local level, because sometimes they're not that connected. And so we have to be that voice that lets them know that, hey, we're ready to move forward, and this is what we're doing right now. So we need those guidelines sooner than later.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Hospitality industry is very much right now at the moment the forefront of a lot of people, because I remember going down to Evan. John Wayne Airport was my famous airport, basically flying in and flying out instead of going to LAX. But
Right.
yeah, there were a lot of hotels and there are a lot of places that I could go down. And apparently, I was kind of like, when I heard about all this pandemic, that was first thing that came to my mind. Now, what about these
Yeah,
hotels and stuff like that? There were a lot of conferences in Irvine, and I hope you continue doing those kind of incentives for the people to come down over there.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, for us, so one thing you mentioned, the advice to the younger cities is the master plan and general plan, just to focus on those plans. So is there any mechanism like the general plan, if the smaller cities, they are drafting them, so can they take help from the bigger cities, or your city kind of mentor those smaller cities just so that they can learn and they can kind of follow through the advice?
Absolutely. We're always willing to sit down with anyone to share what we've done, and share our best practices. But a lot of times, I'll tell people that are in elected positions that are looking to make their cities even better is, you join the League of California Cities, get to talk to other elected officials and other commissioners, and find out what they're doing. I learned so much from not only the League of California Cities, but the U.S. Conference of Mayors, where I'm, learning from mayors across the country and what they're working on, and bringing that back. One of the things that I brought back, I think this was a East Coast city that did this early on in the pandemic. They came up with an initiative that really, instead of being punitive towards their community members, they made it into a community effort to wear the mask and take a pledge and say, you know what, I'm going to do this for my city. I'm going to do this for my community, for my neighbors. So we did that too. We did the Irvine Cares Pledge, where people could go online to our city's website. They could, sign on to that pledge. And basically we had these masks with a little logo on it that said Irvine Cares, that we shipped off to our residents. And I'll tell you that not only the residents got involved, but our businesses started getting involved. So we made decals for them to put on their windows. So when people walked in and saw that decal, they knew that was a business that was going to do everything right to protect not only their employees, but their guests that were coming in. And so this was a movement that helped us. So when other cities were like, fining people for not wearing a mask, we did it the opposite way, and did that because we learned from another city. So it's always good to share resources from one another.
Yeah, no, thank you, Farah. So, and another thing, like now the COVID is kind of dying down, and businesses they are planning to start opening. As you mentioned, you have a task force which is encouraging or helping those businesses. So, how do you see the plan for those businesses going forward? So, how they can open up back up and can flourish?
We did a lot with our business community, especially our restaurants. We made sure that as soon as it was safe, that we were providing outdoor seating areas. We converted some of our parking lots into outdoor seating areas, and made sure that the permitting process was as easy as possible. We had a really quick turnaround time. So if a restaurant came in within 24 hours, they had a permit where they could set up their outdoor dining. And we made sure that we were working with all of our shopping centers and our landlords within the city to make sure that they were following the same guidelines that we were putting out, and that everyone was on the same page. And right now, through the county, we've had business grants outside of the PPP loans and grants. We've had local grants that we put out for the businesses. The first round was $10,000 grants that the business could use in any way that they wanted to, whether it was paying back deferred rents or upgrading their business. And then there was a second round where we added $5,000 for businesses to apply for. And now with this new round of federal money coming in, we're going to be reaching out to the county and trying to get some more business grants. Again, the goal is, when you talk about economic recovery, you can't recover economically if people are still carrying debt from this past year. And so one of the goals of mine has been making sure people are debt free by the time we reopen. And we're doing great with our residents right now. Through our state and federal outreach, we were able to get enough funding to basically pay back any deferred rent that any of our residents have. So we've had a little over, I think, 2,500 people that applied, and we are funding all of them. So that means these folks are going to get all their deferred rents paid, and so they can look forward to being on time and not having debt carried over. And we want to do the same thing with our business community as well.
Right. So I'm going to take you away from the business to a social justice, injustice kind of environment. Every city has this problem, homelessness, right? How are you tackling that?
Well, I hate to brag, but we're one of the cities with the lowest count of homelessness because early on, our city developed the Irvine Community Land Trust. And that land trust worked with developers to acquire land for the city and then through nonprofits developed affordable housing projects. So these are projects that have, a certain percentage for people that are experiencing homelessness, for veterans, for seniors, for those with mental disabilities. And so really, when it comes to affordable housing for these particular groups, Irvine has the highest number. And the way we did it was we dispersed it throughout the city. So it's not like you can drive up a street and say, oh, there's a project and this is an affordable housing project. You can't even tell. And so a lot of times people are living right next door, and they have no idea that one apartment complex is an affordable housing complex and one is not. One is market rate. And so we did an amazing job with that. Right now, I believe we have the highest number of units. We're almost approaching 5,000. And our next goal, a project that we're working on right now, is affordable housing for sale. So we are building townhomes that will be for sale at affordable rates, helping those people from apartments move into their own homes and build equity so we can open up those units for new people to come into.
Right, that's good to know because that's a problem every city is facing right now, and it's a challenge. And I think you've got a very good model that people can look into and start utilizing that because. And part of the thing that you mentioned was working with the NGOs, like basically the non-profit organizations.
Yeah.
How are you able to basically leverage the non-profit organizations into this thing? Is there any kind of like a incentive base, or is it something like how much you're gonna get out of this thing, or is it like number of people you're gonna bring into this environment and make them sure that now they are not homeless, but there is a mechanism to measure the success.
Yeah.
Right. What is your success level?
So for us, we have two major nonprofits, the Kennedy Commission and Jamboree Housing, and their entire goal is to develop affordable housing throughout Orange County. And so we work a lot with them. We work with our private developers, and every time that we're building these affordable homes, we've got wraparound services on site for them. So it's making sure that there is a social worker and any other support services needed, whether it's childcare, to really help these families, get back on their feet. And once they get back on their feet, our job and goal is to get them out of the affordable homes into market rate homes so that those open up. As we're building more, we have an inventory that we can open up. But unfortunately, right now, the housing crisis is just out of control. And every time that we just recently had a 68 unit new building that opened up for affordable housing, and 68 units with almost 5,000 applicants.
Wow.
So you can imagine the need for more affordable housing. And, we are hoping that other cities will pick up the pace as well and do their share so that we can actually get people in the homes that they need to be in.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, good advice.
Right, and another thing on the similar kind of issues that every city facing is that traffic. As things are opening up, that issue is coming up again. The freeways as well as the intercity traffic. So, what is your plan for this? How you are managing it, and how you see it in future?
I want to steal BART from the Bay Area and bring it back to Irvine. That's what I want to do. If I could do that, I would do it. I think, one of the hardest things about traffic is until people start getting out of their cars and using public transportation, not much is going to change,
Yes.
right? And so it's so important to have good infrastructure when it comes to public transportation, something that our city doesn't have right now. I'll be very honest. We have very poor public transportation. And last year, while I was on the council, I actually was able to get some grants to do a pilot program for a local shuttle, which would go through our different neighborhoods, picking people up, taking them to their local shopping center or destination spots like our Great Park, our Spectrum Center, the Marketplace, things like that, so that we could get them starting to think about leaving their cars behind. Because at the end of the day, no matter how many streets you widen and how many more freeways you build, if people are still getting in their cars, they're still buying those cars, we're not going to fix the traffic issue.
Yeah,
Have
no,
you
we are kind of at a saturation point where, yeah, we have to think something different, either the smart network or kind of taking leverage of technology or just changing the mindset. So, in the same kind of direction, so bikes, because things like COVID, everybody was home, so they wanted to go out. So, bike lanes and bikes. So, what is the concept around that in Irvine, and how do you see it?
So bikes are amazing. We love our bicyclists. We have about 66 miles of bike lanes and bike trails in our city. And right now we're actually upgrading a lot of them, making them safer. Some of our main streets have speed limits of up to 55 miles an hour, and you have a bike lane there, which is not the best thing to have. And so we're looking at newer ways of safeguarding those bike lanes, putting in new infrastructure to make sure that it's safer for folks, because we do have a very strong biking population. And so our goal is to upgrade those bike lanes and make them as safe as we can make them.
Yeah, no, 66 mile, that's a huge number. So, if you kind of share, so was there a existing infrastructure since long, or it has been added gradually, so during your tenure?
So it's a little combination of both, right? So we had a very good infrastructure. One of our general plan components is, we have 1/3 of our city that is dedicated to housing, 1/3 dedicated to business, and 1/3 dedicated to open space. And so with that component, there were already a lot of bike trails and, bike lanes already in the process. But what our job was, a lot of those were not connected. So we've been working for the past few years, we've been working hard on making sure there's connectivity, whether it's adding more bridges over streets and making sure that people have a safer way of transporting themselves. And at the same time, making those lanes a lot safer, like I said, in the high speed areas, making sure that we have some barriers installed that make it a lot safer for people to use the bike lanes and continue using them.
Right. No, thank you very much, Faraz. So, Abdul, anything comes to your mind?
so the last thing while we're on transportation, right? Have you looked into light rail systems in Irvine if they're using, and are you expanding the light rail system to broader areas of Irvine right now? Because one of the things that we face right now in Tracy is like, from a 90,000 about 8 years ago to almost 100,000. Every household has got about 2 cars. So we're talking about 20,000 cars coming in right now. Where will they go? Right? Is light rail the way to go, or expanding the roads, or building in more overhead passes and stuff like that? How would you recommend a small city like us, what direction to look into?
I mean, I think light rail is amazing. I know in our city, maybe about a decade ago or so, there was a ballot initiative to bring light rail into our city, and the voters voted it down. And that's very unfortunate, because right now the light rail throughout Orange County is their tracks are being laid. And I reached out to our Orange County Transportation Authority and said, can we extend it into Irvine? And they're like, you guys voted it down, so you're not even in the plans. And so that's really unfortunate. But I think there is opportunity now for us to bring this back, and it won't happen anytime soon, but we can at least lay the groundwork now and make sure that in 10 years, 15 years, that we do have some sort of light rail in our city. But it definitely, that being voted down, set us back many years.
So you have got a lot of businesses out over there in Irvine, high-end businesses basically. Have you tapped onto those people to make it as a business public-private partnership initiative and bring the light rail and use their stations, naming their stations under the name and stuff like that, which will become like advertisement for them. So that's something that now a lot of cities are not taking advantage of because we give a lot of incentive to the businesses to come here. In return, only thing they say we're going to give you a lot of jobs. But what other incentives that are out over there that they can basically give to us, basically value in kind? Have
We
you
do
thought?
a lot of public-private partnerships with our local businesses, but when it comes to the light rail, it is handled by the Orange County Transportation Authority, and they already have their project and funding set out for the next few years. But I don't see why we can't continue those conversations because if we don't get ourselves in now, I think we're going to be setting ourselves back for many, many years.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thanks for those answers.
I have one last question for us. So, your message for the younger generation, especially the younger sisters and the younger daughters, so how they can groom themselves if they have interest in policy making.
I think, one of the best ways is to get involved in your community. You can't get into politics unless you know who your community is. And just get involved, know what the issues are, get involved in the nonprofits, get involved. For me, I was very involved in my kids' PTA. I was very involved in many different organizations in our city, which really gave me an insight to what was needed and what the folks really wanted to see. A lot of times within from our own South Asian community, what I see is people want to shoot for the high offices, right? They want to run for Congress and they want to run for Senate. And once they fail, they kind of disappear back into their daily lives. That's what we don't want. We want people that are really committed to serving the public, that are really committed to bringing change. And that starts at the bottom. You've got to start your way up from the local level on higher, because then it gives you a experience to do the right things as you move up. And not only that, but like I shared with my story, you're gonna fail. Everyone fails once in a while, but don't give up. If your true passion is to really make a difference, if you fail, it's okay. Get right back up and run again. There's no harm in that. There's nothing wrong with trying again. And so I always tell people that if this is truly your passion to serve the public and be that public servant, don't give up after your first try.
All right. That's a good advice.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Farah. We sincerely appreciate your time. We learned a lot, and I'm pretty hopeful of our audience. They would have got something from this discussion, got motivated. And to our listeners, thank you for watching, and please do send us your questions, and we will get those answered. We'll request Farha and other professionals to get those questions answered, and provide us feedback, suggestions for the topics that you want to listen. See you in the next episode. Stay healthy and stay informed. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.